delivery, whatever. All that's going to get cut out, by the way. All of it that we just did. Cool. Well, thanks. Richard Gunther is with us, everybody. Richard Gunther, we talked yesterday. Geez, I'm so terrible. But because I can remember the name of it, why don't we talk about Entertainment 2.0 today?
All right. Entertainment 2.0 is probably the oldest podcast that I've done. I've been doing it for about 8 years. I think the show is almost 11 years old now. And we focus on technology that is enabling digital media in your home. So it might be devices, it might be services. Oftentimes we're talking about cord cutting type things, but we do talk a little bit about physical media, and we have a large audience segment that uses Plex and other services like that in their home. So it really originated from the old home theater PC building crowd, and the show's evolved over the years.
You know what's fascinating to me, and we're going to get to It's News to Richard in just a moment. So on Twitter, on Sunday, I guess it was, somebody that I follow said that they have a new app that they would like to see, or a new API that they would like to see written, where basically if they're watching an old show, it's one of the Star Trek people I follow, so they were talking specifically about Star Trek The Next Generation.
Okay.
They would like an API that basically figures out where you live, or maybe you could put in where you grew up. And instead of just being able to watch the show without commercials, what it would do is when you get to the commercial break, it would go back and play commercials from the late 80s and early 90s to really give you that feel, right? Now, have you watched Pluto TV?
I have watched a little bit, but not enough to really understand the experience. I remember, I believe it was you and one of your guests were talking about, or another show, they were talking perhaps about old commercials on Pluto. And I don't know if it's a channel that played old commercials or what.
Seriously? Because I've talked about Pluto, but I didn't know about that.
I thought there was something that was playing old commercials, and I thought it was on Pluto. Now I'm going to have to go look this up when we're done, because
I found a whole slew of old commercial videos on YouTube, not YouTube. Of course, there are tons of old commercials on YouTube, but Amazon. Amazon has like whole reels of just like old 1950s and 60s commercials or whatever, which is a stupid thing to watch, but I, do it for other reasons. Pluto right now is running TNG. They have a whole channel devoted to TNG, and if you are not a cord cutter, then this will not do anything for you. Like I was telling a friend of mine about it the other day, and I was like, yeah, it's really great because it's like when we used to have TV, and he's like, well, I still have TV, so he doesn't care. But I mean, for me, it's got like the old, it looks like the old cable thing, and it actually plays commercials because it's a free service, but it's an ad-supported service. There's something, like for me, being a Trekkie and being a child of the 80s, there's something sort of comforting about just turning on the TV and finding Star Trek. And you're like halfway through an episode, but you remember enough and you keep up with the rest of it, and there are commercials, so you can get up and walk away, which I'm pretty sure advertisers would love to hear. Anyway, that's not the show that we're doing today. A few weeks ago, I started a feature called It's News to Blank. And the idea behind It's News to Blank is the guest of the week may have a story either that I don't know about, or that just wouldn't have been one of the things that would come up, but it might be something that they're interested in talking about. So normally on Monday, except we got interrupted by the Fortnite follies, normally on Monday, it's News to Blank. Today, it is News to Richard. I'm curious, though, what's news to Richard?
I'm going to start this by saying I am not a financial advisor, so nothing I talk about should influence your decision about what you would invest in.
Right. Same goes for me, by the way. So if I say anything like, oh, you should absolutely, or you absolutely shouldn't, what you really absolutely should do is consult somebody, who knows what they're talking about. All right.
Exactly. So, I know you've talked about it. I know that it's come up in the past, but I am just blown away and astounded by the continual, seemingly endless rise of Apple stock, closing last week at an all-time high of $4.99, considering past splits and such.
$4.97, I think, is where it closed. $4.99. Okay,
$4.99 it hit during the day.
Right.
Just absolutely nuts. And full disclosure, I own some Apple stock, certainly not enough to retire on. But the fact that given the conditions that we're in, given that they've said, oh yeah, our big thing that everybody looks to wonder how we're going to make money next year, that's going to be late. And given that there's still so much unknown about what this move to a new chip base really means for them and their customers,
right?
I am just baffled by how they continue to soar this stock. This is one of those rare stocks that over the years has almost continually been both a growth and an earnings stock, which is kind of rare.
So there are four things that sort of popped to mind when you said all that, and I'm trying to remember what they are. First of all, you're right. The iPhone's going to be late, although I've already seen some analysts say this is going to be great for September 2021. And the reason it's great for September 2021 is because you're not going to have as much in the way of iPhone sales. Huh?
Oh, I thought you would say that quarter would have income from old and new phones, but
no, I think their argument was basically it's going to make September of 2021 a better comparison, because normally September is, either an equal comparison or maybe even a little bit more difficult because nobody expects iPhone 13 to do as well as iPhone 12, and so probably you're not going to have as good a sales. But September of 2021, you're going to have amazing sales, probably assuming that they get back onto, quote, the regular schedule for iPhone, because they won't have had a new phone to sell in September of 2020, which is a ludicrous way. I mean, that's the thing. This whole thing is like a game, right? Like I heard somebody was saying on Twitter yesterday or the day before, or 8 days ago by the time people hear this, I don't know, that the run-up of the stock ahead of the stock split is ridiculous because the value of the shares don't change. Except that Apple has said one of the reasons that they're splitting the stock is so that more people can get into the stock. Because right now they look at it, when they announced the split, what was it, like $350 or something? At the time, people were looking at it and saying, well, that's too much. I'm not going to spend that, right? But if you I don't want to say artificially deflate the price, but if you split it out so that a share of Apple costs $100 instead of $350, then people might see it as more affordable, so they go ahead and they buy in. The value of all the stock goes up. It's just, spread differently. And so somebody said the other day, well, to buy it ahead of the run-up or ahead of the stock split doesn't make any sense because the shares are going to be worth the exact same thing, except no, they aren't, because more people are going to buy them, which is going to drive up the cost. So, 4 of those shares is going to go up the same way that one of those shares would have gone up, except you have a catalyst for that to happen now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
All
but
right.
You're a step much lower. You're still bringing it down to a point where a share is more affordable than it was when this started. And if I remember correctly, I think it was Tim. I think Tim was in charge when this happened last time. There was a 1-to-7 stock split previously, or something along those lines, when it had gotten above 700.
Was that actually, had Steve Jobs already passed at that point?
I thought he had. I'll have to go and check my timing on that. But the whole thing being that, again, they wanted more people to be able to invest. And that is traditionally why when you announce a stock split, the stock value ends up going up, because people know that, okay, this is good, more people will get in on it. And I have to imagine that to some extent they keep that in consideration when they determine what the split is going to be.
Right. The other thing that yes, I don't want to talk about the rest of it, honestly, because the big 800-pound gorilla in the room is what happens 6 months from now. And I'm not talking about Apple at that point. I'm talking about all of it. I don't understand. A couple of people that I talked to have been saying that the market is just completely divorced from what's going on in reality at this point, because you have millions of people being thrown out of work. You have an eviction crisis looming on the horizon. You have COVID-19, not you. The world is dealing with COVID-19, and we don't know how that ends. We have an election coming up. We don't know how that ends. We have international tensions. We don't know how those go. And Apple's at 500.
So, no, you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that that I have been paying attention to is what is it that is doing so well? There are many companies that are not doing well because their businesses aren't doing well. The companies that are driving the market right now are largely tech and pharmaceutical companies that are doing extremely well right now because that's where business is, that's where activity is. And for the most part, a lot of those names are what are in the Dow and the NASDAQ exchanges, contributing to those numbers that we see that are used to represent what is the Dow worth. That's actually like 30, I think it's 30 different stocks that are handpicked as, okay, these are the representative stocks. Well, they're really tech heavy these days.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes. I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to remind people that I have no idea what I'm talking about. If you want to do the same, you're welcome to.
I will also remind people that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to revert to a phrase that I love from one of my favorite reporters on financial stuff, which is Kai Ryssdal. And he always reminds people that the market is not the economy and the economy is not the market.
Kai Ryssdal, he knows what he's talking about. So he's probably got a podcast if you want to. Because we're about done here, I think, aren't we?